but you're the CEO. Why don't you have somebody else empty the dishwashers? And my version of this is I'm never going to ask anybody on my team to do something I'm not willing to do myself. And you're going to see me doing it. Because I want you to empty the dishwashers too. I want to feel you feel empowered, but I also want to tell you, nobody's here is too high up the chain to empty the dishwashers.
Thanks for tuning in to the Top Down Podcast. I'm Josh Mastel, your host, the CEO of Uproar Partners, the pioneers in sales as a service. We have an incredible guest today, someone I'm extremely excited about. Rich Sheridan drops by, the CEO of Menlo Innovations, the author of Chief Joy Officer, a book that if you have not read yet, you have to pick up. Rich is going to talk to us about building culture, being an amazing leader. He has built an organization out of Ann Arbor, Michigan that people from across the world have been traveling in to take tours of, just to take notes and ask questions and watch how he's built the culture that he's built. He's going to tell us all about it today, so stay tuned. All right, so our guest today, I'm extremely excited, the author of Chief Joy Officer, a book that we're going to dive into a lot on this podcast that you have to get, you have to read, the CEO of Menlo Innovations. We have Rich Sheridan join us. Rich, thanks for joining us. Great to have you here.
Great to be here, Josh. Thanks for including me.
Of course. So I guess for the folks that are listening, and just so you know, on the Top Down Podcast, Rich, our listeners are mostly sales leaders, CEOs of organizations, specifically in the tech scene. So a lot of tech founders that are building startups, building products, and leading their organizations. That's kind of to give you just a set the table there, give you an idea of who the listeners are, just for your context. But
they are my
for those
people
that don't know who. Perfect. I love that. You're an engineer at heart, so I love that. So to set the table for those folks that may not know who you are, why don't you kind of give them an update on who you are, what you're doing within the organization and the book, and just give us the set the table for us there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I am a programmer at heart, and by training and background, I spent about the first 20 years of my career actually writing code. I started off when I was just a little kid back in 1971, wrote my first program. Most young people like you, Josh, are astounded there were even computers back in those days, but they were a little different back then. And I launched my career after graduating from Michigan with a couple of degrees in computer science, computer engineering, and officially launched like the professional part of my career in 1982. But ultimately, stepped back from the programming work and did what I will now call the harder work of leading people in the early days, programming teams, now CEO of a software design and development firm here in downtown Ann Arbor, Michigan, called Menlo Innovations. And Menlo has been in business since 2001, so we're just about to celebrate our 18th birthday. It's funny, it still feels like a startup to me, but you know, at 18, it's starting to feel like an adult too. And we are a custom software design and development firm. That's what we do for a living. And we adopted a mission that plays right into the heart of what we'll talk about today, and that is to end human suffering in the world as it relates to technology.
That's great. And I know. You cover this a lot in the book, and I just know from knowing you personally and being inside Menlo, but there's something really special about the company itself that, to the extent that people from across the world, leaders from across the world travel, and this is how me and you originally met years and years ago, doing a tour of Menlo. But I think it'd be cool for the audience to hear a little bit more about what makes Menlo so special that's attracting all these people to come do these tours and what those tours are all about. I think that'd be an interesting point for people to hear.
Yeah, as you say, we now get between 3,000 and 4,000 people a year come from all over the world, literally every populated continent, to visit, see how we do what we do, and hear about our culture. Some will spend just a couple of hours, probably like you did way back when. Others will stay up to 5 days And I always promise people they'll always leave disappointed. That's my sales promise to them. And it is only because no one ever gets all their questions answered when they're here. And so they walk out the door saying, I have 3 more questions. And so what they see here is what I call a cultural, an intentional culture focused on what we talk about here often, the business value of joy. And we are able to define that joy very clearly for the people who visit. What we want more than anything else is to delight the people we intend to serve, which ultimately are the end users of the software that we are designing and developing in this big, wide open space. And we crafted a system, we crafted a culture, we've crafted a set of values that allow us to systematically produce those kind of results. And I think there's 2 reasons people travel from all over the world to see us. One is software is just hard and it fails most of the time. Most software projects fail miserably. Missed deadlines, blown budgets, unhappy users, unhappy customers. So they're intrigued that we've somehow solved the software equation, and they want to see the elements of how we make that work. And we could talk about those if you want. And then the other part is they want to see this energy, this human energy of our team. I think a lot of organizations, even every one of them, is wrestling with this human engagement factor, the team engagement factor, the one that the Gallup poll has been saying for decades now, that 70% of people are disengaged at work. And they see there's something different here, and they want to learn, how does that happen? How do you keep up the human energy of your team on a consistent and sustained basis?
Awesome. And you wrote the first book that you wrote. What's the title of that? Joy Inc. Correct?
Yes, Joy Inc. Yep.
What's the thesis of that book? Is it kind of what you just talked about? Is how to really build that culture and that team? And then let's kind of transition into that. And then as we talk about the Chief Joy Officer, which is your latest book that just came out in December. What's the difference between the two? I'm assuming the first one covers more of the culture. This one, which I've read, is more in the leadership. Correct?
Yes. Yeah. Joy Inc. was more of a broad look at all of Menlo and all the systems that are in place and the practices and so on. And rather than it being a how-to book, it is simply I think this is the other reason people come here, and why in some ways the world demanded that I write a book about what they saw when they were here, is that there's a lot of books. I'm sure you've read a lot of books, Josh, where at a certain point you say to yourself, you know what, this is a great book, but it'd be really neat to see an example right about now of all the principles that are discussed, all the theories that are espoused and all that sort of thing. And I just want to go see one. And that is in many ways the opportunity that we've created here at Menlo. We decided in our earliest days that we were going to share everything we've learned with the world. We're not going to keep anything proprietary or hidden from view. So people come in and they see the real thing. They see a real company working through real problems every single day with real people. And they want to learn about how it all works. How did we put it together? And that was what Joy Inc. was, how we built a workplace people love. And we're very careful to tell people that there is no assumption on our part that anyone should try and copy us. It isn't the point. The point is, wouldn't it be neat to come in and deeply explore a working culture, ask all the questions you want, and take home the pieces and parts you want? The segue from the first book to the second was actually based in a chapter inside of Joy Inc. called Building Leaders, Not Bosses. The world became intrigued that we don't actually have a hierarchy here. We don't have reporting relationships. There is no one here who would say, that person is my boss. And that intrigues people. And it's actually a harder choice in building an organization, I will tell you. And so Chief Joy Officer was this idea of, what does leadership look like inside of an organization that doesn't have a hierarchy?
That's awesome. So for the listeners, I think you'll get a kick out of this story of why I'm so honored to have Rich on the podcast. But I'm like a junkie on culture and building teams. Like I love this stuff. So I've been really excited for this conversation with you, Rich. But just about 3-4 weeks ago, I was talking to 2 different people in 1 week who both recommended to me, like, Josh, you need to read The Chief Joy Officer. Like if you like, I know that you love building teams and you're a big culture guy and you want to have an amazing environment for your salespeople. Like, you have to read this book. So I went on to Amazon, I typed the book in, and then no one told me who the author was. When the author popped up, I was like, Rich Sheridan. Like, I know Rich Sheridan. And I looked back, and me and Rich had met 10 years ago through a friend of mine who had a connection to Rich. And I went and took a tour. It's like, it was just bizarre. Rich, me and you have obviously talked about the story because I sent it to you in the email, but crazy story about how we came together. I think the people would appreciate that.
I love that story, Josh. I love the fact that you have friends who are telling you got to read this book. I need to meet those people.
Yeah, for sure. But I say that to say, so I've now read, and I've had the book for 2.5 weeks now. And in full transparency, I've only read about 3/4 of it because I've read the first half probably 3 different times. So to those out there, I really mean this. I'm not getting comped by Rich to plug his book right now. The Chief Joy Officer really is the best leadership book I've probably ever written or read. So I would like to, Rich, let's spend a little bit of time diving into some things that stuck out to me, and I'm sure there's some stories in there that might come out that some folks are going to want to hear. So let's dive into that if you don't
You
mind.
bet.
So I think the thesis from the book, I think you summed it up really, really well in the beginning, and it's a quote from the book. You say, joy at work seems like such a simple idea. Just make everybody happy, right? That's, I think, what most people think. And you say, no, embracing joy at work means fighting joy's greatest enemy, which is fear.
Yes.
Can you dive into that for people? To me, that's kind of the thesis of the book, is how do we take fear out of the workplace? How do we as leaders make sure that that's happening and lead our own lives that way? Can you dive into that for the listeners? I think that's a huge
You
point.
bet. And it's funny. Authors. I've talked to a lot of authors, and they have done and had the same experience I've now had, where once you write the book and it gets out there and you start doing these kind of things and talking about it, you realize there's almost this process where you boil things into a grander idea that didn't get in the book. And there's some elements of this in the book, but I'm going to just paint a picture for your listeners, and then we'll go right to fear. When I started thinking about what would I speak to the world about when I get on keynote stages and so on, and I had a team member working with me, I related it to a hobby I have as a private pilot. I haven't flown for a number of years, but I got my pilot's license when I was a kid. And you'll see a lot of airplane references and Wright Brothers references in my books. And I likened a human organization to an aircraft and started talking about the forces at work that allow a plane to fly. Because I think we all, in our organizations, we want our teams to fly. So I said there's the force of lift that brings the plane up off the ground. There's the force of weight that holds it down, and lift has to exceed weight. There's the force of thrust provided by a power plant of a propeller or a jet engine that pulls us forward, and there's the force of drag that holds us back. And I use this as a metaphor for human organizations. There's the lift of human energy, there's the weight of bureaucracy, there's the thrust of purpose, and then there's the drag of fear. So since you asked me about fear, let's go to fear first. What does fear do? What role does it play in our lives? And should we eliminate all fear? And no, I think there's some really healthy fears that literally keep us alive, right? We get a physical every year because we fear our health might get off track if we don't. We try and exercise, we try and eat right, we try and get enough sleep, and we don't walk out into traffic without looking both ways. And, all of those things are fears that are healthy and they keep us alive. The fear I'm talking about that diminishes the human energy of a team and diminishes everything about a team is what I call the manufactured fear that we often use to motivate, right? And it can be as simple as a boss raising an eyebrow at a meeting, or a heave a sigh, or pound a fist on a table, or just come up and say, "Hey, Josh, how's it going? What you working on? Are you almost done? Are you coming in this weekend?" And all of those little elements of fear that basically beacon out. Don't you dare share bad news. I want to hear everything that's good. And if it isn't good, you're coming in tonight and you're going to make it work, right? That fear actually puts us in a different area. It actually steals the most human part of us, the part that's responsible for creativity, innovation, invention, and imagination, because it puts us in reptile mode. It puts us in fight or flight mode. You drop a drop of adrenaline and cortisol in your bloodstream, and now you're just looking at surviving. And probably the worst version of this I've ever seen in management practices is the one where a company will force rank their employees from top to bottom and then every year cut the lowest 10%.
Yeah.
And I don't have to run faster than the tiger, Josh. I just have to run faster than you. And I can make you look bad if I want to. I can just say a little thing in the coffee room when I'm with your boss or you're the CEO of the company and say, hey, how's that project that Josh is working on? It seems like it's in trouble. Are you keeping track of that? Because I don't have to make myself look good. I just have to make you look worse than me. And if I can accomplish that, then you're cut that year, not me. That's a horrible way to build a company culture.
Yeah, and as you say that, it's like it's so easy as a listener to say, well, no one, like, obviously no one should be running an organization that way. No one wants to be in an organization that way. But the truth is, that is the exceptional norm. You travel a lot and speak, and you see a lot of organizations. That is the norm in the corporate world right now. Correct?
Oh, it is. I mean, and not the force ranking. I mean, that's actually still rare, thank God, and it's actually getting rarer by the day. But just even simple things like annual performance reviews. I mean, there's two fundamental things wrong with the typical annual performance review. Number one, well, it's actually more than two things wrong now that I think about it. But number one, it's annual, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to save stuff up for 12
Yeah.
months and then load it on you at the end of the year. And number two, there's a part of it that's pretty darn arbitrary in a very negative way. I often talk to large corporations and I torture them with the meets expectations versus exceeds expectations categorization on a typical annual performance review. At the end of the day, it's like a grading system, and we don't care anything about what the essays say about us and how we're doing and what we need to work on. All we care about is, did I meet expectations or did I exceed expectations? Right? It's like little bubble dots on the form. And I can tell you, I'm pretty sure there's nobody in your audience who ever walked into an annual performance review shrugging their shoulders going, I did okay this year. I just met expectations. No, everybody goes into those saying, I tore the cover off the ball this year. And then the boss is like, well, you got an exceeds 3 years ago, and we can only give out 3.7% of our team gets an exceeds. So you just met expectations this year, and you walk out deflated.
Yep.
You walk out probably pissed.
Yep.
And it's going to take you weeks or months to recover from that emotional discharge that happened in that 1 hour meeting with your boss in December. I always say that annual performance review processes in most organizations ruin everyone's December, the bosses
Sure.
and the workers alike.
100%. I've always I think I had a mentor of mine early in my career give me that advice, and thank God I've never done annual performance reviews. I've done a lot of other things. I'd be curious to know, what is your, within this world and culture you've created, what do you think is the best way to be giving and sharing feedback? 'Cause feedback is important. How do you do it?
So I'm going to back up to a very high level kind of meta concept, and I'm wired as a systems thinker. In fact, I'm sitting in a room here that it has one of the leading systems thinkers quotes on the wall, so I can read it to you. It's by a guy named Dr. John Gall. And it says, a complex system that works is invariably found to have evolved from a simple system that worked. A complex system designed from scratch never works and cannot be patched up to make it work. You have to start over with a working, simple system. And here's a fundamental element of systems thinking that I learned in Peter Senge's book, The Fifth Discipline. And it is this: the only way systems work is if they have strong and short, and I want to underline short, communication and feedback loops. So the annual performance review fails the short part of that, right? Because you're waiting 12 months to get feedback. And you'll hear about things you did in January, in February, in March. And you're sitting there thinking, okay, if I was doing that wrong, why didn't you just come and tell me? Why did you wait till now, right? So my simple encouragement to your listeners is learn to give feedback in the moment. Now, if you got upset about something, you might take a few minutes or even a day and calm yourself down. One of my mentors here in Ann Arbor is a guy by the name of Paul Saginaw, who's the co-founder of the wonderful Zingerman's Food Empire in Ann Arbor. Paul has a great quote on this. He says, "When furious, get curious." And I love that for so many different reasons. But quite frankly, if you're furious, there's no way you could get curious like in an instant. It's like calm yourself down, take a breath, take a day if you need it, and then go back and say, and we teach our team when you're having trouble with another person, check in with the human first. If somebody did something that really ticked you off today, and all you want to do is go, sort of the verbal equivalent of punch them in the nose to let them know how upset you are, check in with them first. Look them in the eye and say, "Hey, Josh, are you okay?
Yeah.
Is everything okay in your life?" Because you might have buried a pet the day before. You might have a sick relative. You may have gotten news of a dear friend who has gotten a bad diagnosis, and you were up all night talking to him on the phone, trying to calm him down. And you might just be having a bad day.
Yeah.
And if we don't check in first on that kind of stuff, we could really do something stupid later when finally it comes out, oh, yeah, I we had to put our dog down yesterday.
Yep. And you give a great example of that in the book about how you acted out of anger, frustration with an employee one time. And because you've created that culture, the next day you walked in, an employee who saw that grabbed you right away and said, "Hey, is everything okay? What's going on?" That was out of character for you yesterday. I love that story. That was really cool.
Yeah, yeah. I'm delighted to say that I have probably at least a half a dozen or more people here at Menlo who are absolutely willing to pull me aside and give me some important feedback, and that's a delightful place for me to
I
be.
love that. You have to have that. So to segue into back to the fear topic, right? So um to be practical and some of the execution of this for for people who are leading organizations listening right now, I think the story of Ellie's Place that you give in the book is a really cool example of how a leader can actually take this concept and really build the way that they act and perform in the organization. I think it might be good if you shared the 2-minute version of that story from the book for people. I really love that.
Yeah, Ellies Place is this wonderful nonprofit here in Ann Arbor that helps families um, who are grieving, particularly families who have lost a child or a parent, and the kids in particular, the young children, don't know how to process the emotions of that event in their lives. And of course, that happens probably more often than any of us want to even consider, that you've lost a sibling at a young age, or you've lost a parent at a young age. And Ellie's Place is a place named after Ellie Stover, who died when she was very young, less than 2 years old. And Ellie Stover's mom, Betsy, needed to build a place because there was nothing there. So she invented this whole nonprofit that helps grieving families. So it's really touching and just an amazing nonprofit. They came in to give our team a lunch and learn, and they told us about this exercise they use with teens. And it's an exercise of a white plastic mask like you get at a costume party. And on the outside of the mask, the teens were writing words about what they wanted the world to believe about them. And the words would be something like, "I'm okay now. I've moved on. I'm happy again. Don't worry about me. I'm fine." On the inside of the mask, the part that only they saw, they wrote words of how they were really feeling. Why, God? When will the pain go away? And and then at the end of that, they turn their masks around and show them to the other teens. Teens they don't know. And of course, what do they learn? That everybody in the group is going through the same thing. And it's in that moment that the teens begin to realize I'm not alone in this journey. Someone else could help me through this. I can actually open up my heart to other people who have experienced the same pain I've experienced. And when I saw that exercise, I thought, wow, how often do we do this as leaders? Where our outside mask says one thing, I'm confident, I've got this, I'm in charge, don't worry, I've got it, I can take this where it needs to go. But on the inside, we might say, I'm worried, I'm scared, I'm not sure what to do next. I'm not sure if I'm taking the right approach. And if we started sharing some version of those inside masks with other leaders on our teams or in the world, suddenly we start to feel supported by those around us. Suddenly we realize, oh my gosh, I'm not alone in this scary journey of leadership. Because leading other people is a hard journey. And there's no simple task to do it, a simple way of doing this. And so, for me, I just thought the analogy of that mask for leadership would be a really interesting experiment around.
100%. I mean, we could spend a whole day talking about the benefits of leaders being vulnerable with their teams on that. I think every time I need to get much better at that as a leader myself, but
We all do.
the times that I have sat my team down and say, hey guys, I'm a bit worried. Like I'm a bit worried about where we're at right now for the month. Here's some things I'm going to do to pick it up. And you show them that you're a human and you're not like this bravado superhero. Yep. I mean, people lift you up, and that's, I love that example. That was really good. I want to go into some tangible things for almost if we could do like a virtual tour of Menlo, because you brought up some cool stuff in the book. And what I love, one of a quote from the book, you say, we do some weird things at Menlo that get us a lot of attention. Now, we talked about them earlier, but there's 3 specific things that I would love to learn more about. One would be your stand-up meetings. How do you run those? I think there's a lot of people on the listening in that maybe don't do that. And I personally do that, but I'd like to improve mine or give some value to folks who don't do it. The second would be your hiring process. And the third would be the story of your personal morning routine. I love how you're the one walking in, turning the lights on. So I think those
did it this morning. Yep.
Perfect. Let's start with the stand-up meetings. Like, dive us into that.
Yeah. I think for decades now, people have thought stand-up meetings are a good idea. What we look at when we create a new system like that, and stand-up for us is a system, is what can we take off the table? So in other words, one of the challenges in making organizational changes is typically they only feel additive. In other words, we're going to do a stand-up meeting now. And it was like, oh, great, another meeting. Well, I would suggest to your listeners that if you're going to do a daily stand-up meeting like we do, take your Monday morning status meeting and throw it away, because nobody wants to be there anyways, right? So you take that 1 hour meeting and get rid of it and replace it with a daily stand-up meeting. And that's what we did. And so our daily stand-up meeting happens every day at 10. It actually literally happened while we were on the call here this morning. I didn't go to it, of course, because I'm with you. 10 o'clock in the morning, a dartboard goes off. We have a dartboard on the wall. It's been there for all the 18 years of our existence. And for some weird reason, the dartboard has an alarm clock in it. We don't know why a dartboard needs an alarm clock, but it does. And was programmable. So we programmed it because we're programmers. And at 10 o'clock every morning, bong, 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 bong. And that impartial device calls the meeting. And I don't want to lighten up the load on that idea, because if you put someone in charge of calling a daily stand-up, Josh, you're going to be the one who gathers the team together. The team will hate you in 3 days. Yeah. Oh gosh, here comes Josh again. I'm busy right now. Leave me alone. But it's really hard to get mad at the dartboard. So again, systems thinking, right? I mean, partial device. So the device goes off, the alarm goes off. Everybody in the room, almost like Stepford children, gathers in a circle, and we bring the whole team together. In fact, if you're a visitor here, you join it as well. And so we'll have 50 or 60 people in our daily stand-up meeting. We grab the plastic Viking helmet, the 2-horned plastic Viking helmet. That is our talking stick. And that's why there's Viking helmets on the covers of both books. And that talking stick is convenient for us because we work in pairs here. One of our weird things, which will portend some part of the discussion in the interview process. Because we work in pairs, we report out in pairs. And so having a two-handled talking stick is actually really convenient.
Mm.
So if you and I were paired together today, we would grab the horn and we report on what we're working on. Hi, good morning. I'm Rich. This is Josh with me. We're doing a podcast today that's being recorded for future release to Josh's audience. And later this afternoon, I have a call with somebody who wants me to come speak at a conference in New Orleans. And, just report out our status. And if we need help, we would ask for help at that point. If we want to report out any personal things, it was Nicole's birthday today. She brought in donuts. That's another fun, weird thing we can talk about, is why team members bring in treats when it's their birthday rather than us doing anything different. So Nicole would have said when it got to her, "Oh, by the way, today's my birthday." And guess what happens? Everybody cheers and maybe they sing happy birthday. And then she says, "Oh, and I brought in donuts." And then everybody really cheers and Nicole's the hero on her birthday.
I love it.
So the token moves around the room, and within 13 minutes, Josh, I swear, it's almost always 13 minutes, the entire meeting completes.
Love it.
Called, started, held, everyone gets a chance to talk. The token moves around the circle, and then it's set down at the very end. Somebody says, "Let's be careful out there." I don't know if any of your listeners will remember Hill Street Blues. That's how they always ended their daily stand-up meetings. And then they go to work, 13 minutes. And so we do that meeting once a day, every day. So we've taken the 1 hour daily or the weekly status meeting and broken it up into 5 13-minute meetings that keep the team's energy high. And this is one of the things we do. We think meetings actually deplete energy, and things like stand-up meetings that are a little more fun actually lift human energy.
Sure.
Back to the airplane metaphor.
So as a CEO, as a leader, what do you think is the biggest value that you gain and the team gains out of the stand-up meeting?
We don't put too much weight on stand-up. Like, this is the most amazing thing we do every day. But what it does is it keeps us all connected. Even though we're in one big open room together, it's neat. If I worked on that project last week and I'm still curious, how's it going over there? I'll hear report outs from team members who were on that project this week. I might, it's nice to know Nicole's birthday. I'll tell you, here's a really simple one. I mean, you're going to laugh, but this is important. We actually, because visitors often come to stand up, we're polite and we introduce ourselves. So what I would say is, "Good morning, I'm Rich," and you'd say, "Hi, I'm Josh." Of course, nobody knows you because you haven't been here before. But it goes around the room and everyone introduces themselves every single day, whether we have visitors or not. Now, the beauty of that, though, and we're a team of about 60 people, is if we have somebody new come in, think about how many times a new person came in and, you greeted them the first time you saw them and say, "Hey, you're new here. What's your name?" "Oh, it's Ben." And then the next day, "Oh, I forgot their name.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. What's your name again?" "Ben." By the third time, you're not going to ask him his name because you feel like an idiot because you keep forgetting their name, right? And so, you finally say, "Hey, good morning. How are you?" And you won't use their name again for months until you overhear it. Well, you're going to hear Ben introduce himself every single day, and you're going to remember who the heck he is.
I love that. That's really good. That's really cool. So
And maybe, the high level thought here is a lot of what we do here is about building human relationships.
sure. And I think, and that kind of segues into, I know you mentioned working in pairs, which is probably a bit foreign in the development world. I've heard of some organizations doing that. But
It's rare, but we're not unique in that. Yep.
Sure. And then your hiring process, though, plays a part in that. And I was really intrigued by that in the book. I'd love to hear a bit more about the hiring process of how you vet folks and onboard folks.
Yeah, and I will tell you, if you want to change your culture, if you really want to improve your culture, if that's something you're doing, you're working on inside your organization, and you don't look at the very human systems that build your team, you're never going to change. So in the human systems I'm talking about is, how do we recruit? How do we interview? How do we decide who makes it through and who doesn't? How do we onboard new people? And then how do we give them feedback so they can move up the pay system over time? You have to look at each one of those systems. And I will tell you, the stuff we do at each one of those stages, very different. So let's go right to the interview process itself. We're going to do one of these in a couple of weeks because we need more people, which is delightful. And in what I'm about to describe is actually it's a spectator sport now. So if any of your listeners, if they hear it before the next extreme interview, they could come in and just simply watch how we interview. So people come and actually observe an interview here. But what we do is, because we work in pairs, we knew that the cultural norms here were going to be different enough, especially for introverted engineers who are typically used to what I call sensory deprivation. Put them in a cube, turn down the lights, let them put earbuds in their ears, and let them come in and work at weird hours so they don't overlap with other human beings. And here we're this in-person company that basically works between 8 in the morning and 6 at night. Everybody's in the same room together. There are no private offices, and we ban earbuds. So it's a different kind of environment, and it's a noisy environment. And so we had to simulate, or we decided we're going to simulate the work environment during the interview. So we do a mass interview. We'll bring 30, 40, 50 people in all at once, and we'll pair the candidates with one another during the interview. It looks a little bit like speed dating. And so there's numbers on the table, and we assign people. You go sit at table 12, and you go sit at table 11. And those two put together, these two candidates are going to work together for 20 minutes. We give them a task to work on. We give them a single piece of paper and a single pencil, because when we do pairing here, and everybody pairs here, not just our programmers, which makes us even more unusual on the pairing spectrum, they're sharing a keyboard and a mouse. So we're letting them share a piece of paper and a pencil and a task. And we give the candidates the weirdest instructions ever. We say, oh, by the way, Josh, your job is to get Jennifer, who's sitting next to you, a second interview. Make your partner look good. This is the opposite of the force ranking system.
Yeah.
The only way you succeed is to help someone else succeed better than you. And so we're looking for good kindergarten skills. We even tell you failure modes. Don't grab the pencil out of Jennifer's hand. Make eye contact with her, introduce yourself, be polite, support her if she's struggling. If she has a question, answer it for her. If she's struggling to find the word and you know it, give it to her. And so, and while this 20 minutes is going on, there's a Menlonian, that's how we refer to ourselves, sitting across taking notes about what they see. So we have an interview process where we literally don't ask any questions. It's an audition. 20 minutes in, switch the pairs, because we switch the pairs here every 5 days. So we're going to simulate you not only working with one other person, but three. We're going to do 3 pair switches during this interview. And in 2 hours, you're out the door. That was the first interview. 3 20-minute pairings, a little bit of talking in between, answering questions at the end, that sort of thing. And boom, you came in at 4 in the afternoon. By 6 at night, you're home with your family. And we just interviewed 50 people.
Wow.
And the 25 Menlonians then stay after over pizza and pop. We go through everybody we saw, and the 3 people who would have seen you vote with their thumbs. Say, who saw Josh? And if you get 3 enthusiastic thumbs up, we don't even talk about you. Automatic buy into the second interview. If you get 3 enthusiastic thumbs down, we have to talk about you because you did something funny, and we'll all enjoy it. But usually there's 1 enthusiastic thumbs up, 1 enthusiastic thumbs down, and 1 that's kind of wiggling in the middle. And then we talk. The 3 people who saw you talk about what they saw, what the differences were. Team asks lots of questions. And at the end of that discussion, which takes 2 or 3 minutes, everybody who is there, the 25 people who observed, all vote on Josh with their thumbs. And we just count thumbs.
Wow.
The second interview, if you make it through, is come and work for us for a day and we pay you. Pair in the morning with one Menlonian, pair in the afternoon with another, do real work on a real client project. So you're now getting a sense of what is it really like to work here? Because most interview processes are what I call 2 people sitting across the table lying to each other for a couple of hours, right?
Of course.
And, I had somebody yesterday tell me, yeah, we're trying to build a great team. And, we tell them, this is a place of self-starters, and you got to come in high energy, and you got to be willing to get stuff done and that sort of thing. It's like, what does that even mean?
Yeah. How do you find that?
Yeah. And how would I interpret whether this is a place I want to work? Here, we just say, no, come in and work for a day. See if you like it. We don't anticipate everybody's going to like working here. This is a very different kind of workplace. You might say, not for me.
Sure.
Okay, that's fine. We're not trying to be all things to all people. But if that day works, we look for 3 more thumbs, the 2 people you paired with and yours. Because you might say, yeah, that's a great day, but I don't want to work here. Awesome. Wow, we figured that out in a day? That's so cool,
Yeah.
right? Um, and then if that works, we invite you in for a 3-week paid trial. And you look just, I mean, it's literally an employment agreement at that point, but just with a clear decision point at the end of 3 weeks, whether you make it through or not. And we don't expect people to be perfect Menlonians after 3 weeks. But if there are challenges, we're going to tell you, we're going to start teaching you how we give feedback. And we're going to tell you our expectation is we're going to watch to see if you respond to the feedback.
Yeah.
Are you making progress towards the goal?
Man, that's great. That is really, really cool. I mean, that has me thinking internally about how I'm doing my personal interview process for this. Will work great for salespeople. I hire a bunch of salespeople. This would work perfect for that.
No question. In fact, when I did this pairing experiment the first time back at Interface Systems, and the sales team saw our programmers pairing, they said, "Oh my gosh, let's try pairing on a sales call, especially a cold call, right?" And so they get on a speakerphone. There'd be 2 sales guys at the table. And of course, what's neat about that is, the one sales guy's talking to the customer, the potential of the client, potential client, and the other one's listening. And then at a certain point, they just segue because it's hard to both talk and listen at the same time.
Sure.
And so you might miss something. You might have heard the customer say something that's really important to them, but the guy who was talking missed it because he wants to tell, here's what our company does and all this sort of thing. And the second guy might chime in and say, "Hey, I heard you say that this is really important to you. Tell me more about this." And just that kind of injection in a sales conversation can be the difference between winning the deal.
I love that. That's great. That's great. Now I have this weird desire to always know people's morning routines. Like I'm a morning routine guy. It's kind of a weird thing about me. Like I'll meet someone brand new for the first time. It'll be like in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I wonder what his morning routine is, which is really strange. But you share a great story in the book. I think the listeners would love to hear it. Like what your morning routine is.
Yeah, I am, as you, probably a creature of habit. My alarm goes off every morning at 5:35, and I'm up, take a shower, and either Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I head off to my personal fitness instructor, which is awesome. I did that this morning, or I head to the office. And either way, I'm either getting in about between 6 and 6:30 in the morning, or a little bit before 8 o'clock in the morning, depending on whether I'm working out or not. And when I walk in the door, I'm usually the first one here. And this is not a team that rises early typically. And so I'm walking in, and I'm basically sunrise at Menlo, in that I'm turning on all the lights, and I walk the entire place and turn on every light switch in the place. Get the coffee pot warming up, make that first pot of coffee in the morning for the team, empty the dishwashers. It keeps me humble. And quite frankly, I mean, I have this little thought process I go through because, a lot of people might look at me and say, "But you're the CEO. Why don't you have somebody else empty the dishwashers?" And my version of this is I'm never going to ask anybody on my team to do something I'm not willing to do myself. And you're going to see me doing it because I want you to empty the dishwashers too. I want to feel empowered, but I also want to tell you, nobody's here is too high up the chain to empty the dishwashers. But I will tell you the other thing I've discovered, and I haven't written this in the book, but it's actually a neat moment when people start filtering in, and they'll head to the break room where the dishwashers are and the coffee pot and everything. It's a neat moment for me to just check in with them. I can ask them about their commute in, how's their family doing. I start learning about things going on in their lives and that. And it's much more, which I say, there's no, if I say, I'm the CEO and I'm trying to run this great culture and all this sort of thing. But if I say in the middle of the day, "Hey, Josh, can we get together for a few minutes?" You're going to panic, right? I don't care how nice a guy I am, or he's written all the books on joy and all that sort of thing. You're going to be like, "Oh my God, what did I do? Oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. Am I going to get fired?" And I got to calm you down for the first 2 minutes. Like, "Josh, I just want to see how your life's going. What's going on?" "Oh, wow. I was just really worried. I thought I did something wrong." It's like, when's the last time I summarily fired somebody here? But anyways, that's just comes with the territory, and I get it. But in the coffee room, in the break room, and you walk in and you're about to get your morning cup of coffee, you say, "Hey, Josh, how's it going? What's going on in your life? Did you do anything interesting this weekend? Tell me where you drive in from." I learn a lot about the team members in those little, just while I'm emptying the dishwasher, right? They're just seeing me doing that. And then after that, I start with email. I'm a nut about email. If any of your listeners write me an email, I'm going to answer it within 24 hours. I think by the time I came into this meeting, I had about 9 messages in my inbox. I can be an inbox zero guy. It almost never gets right down to zero, but it's usually by the end of the day, it's down to 4 or 5.
That's really cool. That's really cool. What we're I want to be conscious of your time here. There's just a couple other things I'd like to get to for some of the engineering brains that are listening in.
Sure.
All of my customers are tech founders, and I know there's a good listening from them. But you say a quote, you have a poster in your office, and I'd never heard of this quote before. I love it. It's probably because I'm not an engineer, but the computer can't tell you the emotional story. It can give you the exact mathematical design, but what's missing is the eyebrows, which is, I think that is a really brilliant quote. And what advice do you have as someone who's built a tech company that you're building software for your customers and you're leading the organization? What advice do you have for a tech founder on this podcast right now, listening in, for how to be great at his job when he's balancing building a product in the fast changing world of tech, and he's trying to be a leader himself as well? I know it's a loaded question.
Yeah, you bet. Number one, you can't give that quote to your audience without telling them who said it, and it was Frank Zappa. That is a Frank Zappa quote, which is just delightful. And yeah, it's one of the most popular posters we have up on our wall. So my encouragement, particularly to your visionary leaders, those could be CEOs or division chiefs or something like that, is every organization should be able to answer 2 questions easily, but it won't be simple to get to these answers. And it is, who do we serve, and what would delight look like for them? And when I get CEOs in here or top leaders in organizations, and I ask them that question to think about, I take 3 obvious stakeholders off the table. I take off your customers, your employees, and your investors. Of course, you have to serve them. If you didn't serve your customers, you don't have any revenue, you don't have any profit, you're going out of business. If you don't keep your employees served, you're going to lose your staff, and you're going to have turnover, and everybody's going to notice, and you're going to have a bad life. If you don't take care of your investors, that's where your capital comes from to build your business. You have to take care of them. What I'm going to encourage your listeners to think about is, who do you serve beyond those stakeholders? So here at Menlo, when we talk about ending human suffering in the world as it relates to technology, we consider the end users of the software we're designing and building for. And those are people we will never meet, who do not pay us for what we do, who will probably never know who the heck we are, because we are building software for businesses who may turn that into products they sell, or they may use it internally. But most of the people who touch the software we build every day have no idea who we are, don't even know we exist. But our mantra here is to serve them, to delight the end users of the software we're designing and building. And most software tortures, right? And so I would encourage your listeners to think about those 2 questions. And I'll just give you a simple other example, just so you can see where I'm going with this. If you were a life insurance company, we had one in here not too long ago, and I asked them these questions. And I said, who do you serve? And of course, their immediate answer was their policyholders. And I said, yep, I get why you would say that. But let me tease you with another thought. Because with your product, by the time your policyholder's policy pays off, they're gone. They've passed on.
Yeah.
I believe who you're actually serving are the beneficiaries of the policy. And, and what are they expecting? They're expecting empathy and compassion and understanding and maybe a shoulder to cry on. They're expecting execution and organization, and they're probably expecting a big check after all said and done. So this is a really important question. It's not about the technology. It's about the humans. And so whatever product you're building, I would suggest that the questions you ask are like, what problem are we trying to solve in the world? We have people come into us and they're like, hey, Menlo, we understand you build software. We want to build an app. And we're like, awesome. What problem are you trying to solve? And they look at us funny. They're like, well, the problem is we don't have an app. We want you to build an app. That's the problem. I'm like, okay, let me be very clear here. No one on planet Earth woke up this morning, or any morning for that matter, in the history of mankind, saying, you know what I need today more than anything else? I need a nap.
Yeah.
Nobody ever said that, right? People want to have a better relationship with their kids. They want to take care of their health. They want to eat better. They want to feel better about themselves. There are serious problems that technology can help solve. But if we don't start with what problem are you trying to solve and who are we trying to solve it for, we're going to miss the mark, and we're going to end up building something that no one ever uses, which is the saddest story of all in software.
Of course.
And so we had to build an entirely different team to take care of this question, and we call them our high-tech anthropologists. High-tech anthropologists. We have a set of people on our team. That's what it says on their business card. Their job is to go out in the world and study the people we intend to serve in their native environment, learn their workflow, their goals as human beings, their vocabulary. So when we design the software, it actually works for the people who are going to use it every day, rather than just the engineers.
That is such great advice for folks. I mean, I think we can mic drop and end there on that piece of advice for a lot of people. Listeners, if you if you're not familiar with Menlo, with Rich, with the Chief Joy Officer, Rich, where should we point people to for the book? Obviously, Amazon's a great place for the book, but if for tours in Ann Arbor or for inquiries about Menlo itself, like where should we direct people to?
Yep. I would say start with our website, menloinnovations.com, MENLO, innovations.com. That'll tell you how to take a tour. That'll tell you how, what we do and who we do it for and why we do it the way we do it. There's a lot of stuff we put there where you're going to see a company that has chosen to teach the world why we do things the way we do them. Whether they come be our customers or not, we do have that service-oriented attitude towards everyone in the world who encounters us. So there's a lot of resources there that maybe if you can't come visit, buy the books. You can read our website, you can read our blogs and all that sort of thing. So there's lots of free stuff there that you can go find out about us. But if you want to take a tour, there's lots of options. If you want to take deeper classes here, that's where the multi-day visits come in. We actually offer classes in everything we do here. You can do that. Obviously, you can read the books as well. You can follow me on Twitter. Menlo Prez is that one with a Z. And I've got a big presence under the same moniker on LinkedIn. So there's another place we share information with the world.
Awesome. Rich, thank you so much. This is awesome. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Josh. It's been a delight talking with you this morning.
All right, if you're still with us, that means you have made it to the finish line and you have joined us for the entire podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Do us a huge favor and forward this podcast onto your social media or over to email for anyone that you think it would provide some value to, if it was any help to you whatsoever. Thank you so much for being a fellow listener, and stay tuned for some more podcasts to come.